Welcome, Wargamers, to the frozen norths of Ea, because today we are talking about a particular hero from the Nord faction, the Konungyr. This is the Nord hero that comes in the newest starter set by Bellum, the two-player starter set that comes with Nords and city-states. And as I mentioned in my Milestone 2 hobby stream for the Conquest Paint-Along League, I actually inherited a Nord army from a very cool local gentleman, and I had a Konungyr commission painted by ESG Studios over on Instagram. Please go check this guy out. It's an incredible amount of work that he does. But I wanted a sea-themed Nord army, and so that was the pitch that I put forward to him. And he basically painted a Konungyr to kind of match the sea Jotnar. And all of those things, right? The Nords coming to me, and then also them being in the starter set, had me thinking, we needed to talk about this guy, because the Konungyr is probably one of the coolest heroes to exist in this game. So this is for me to get excited about my model, but also for anyone who's just jumping into Conquest with Nords from the two-player starter set. We're going to talk all about the Konungyr, his lore, his rules, how to get the most out of him on the table, and I think you're going to enjoy it. One thing I'd like to add up top really quickly is that if you like this video and you're interested in Nords, the starter set, or Conquest in general, please consider using the affiliate link in my description down below. You save 10% on all your purchases store-wide from Bellum, and using that link throws a little tip into my tip jar, and it goes directly to supporting me, my wife, our cats, all of us. Thank you so much to everyone who's used that link. It's life-changing stuff, and it really does mean the world to me. I also want to point out here that I am now a part of the Goonhammer Network. This is a bunch of content creators who just really want to point folks towards good content on the internet. And while Goonhammer does have a ton of writers, and I can't say that I agree with all of them, there is a small burgeoning community of Conquest minds over on Goonhammer, and so I really want to encourage people to go check out that site, because as much as I love making videos, there are tons of people who prefer written content, and that is exactly what Goonhammer is here for, helping people get started and talking about their favorite game. Now, for those of you who are new to Conquest or Nords as a faction, the Nords really are one of the human factions that exist within the icy norths of Ea, the planet they're on. They have a rich lore and history. It's kind of steeped in superstition and all kinds of macabre imagery. It's very similar to, I guess you could say, Vikings and Norse mythology from our world. And so people can often look at the table and be like, oh, okay, they're Vikings. And then you hear the story and you're like, oh yeah, there's, Yggdrasil, the tree of life, and then there's Odin and Loki. You're like, oh, okay, so they just kind of copied and pasted things. But here's the thing. Conquest has a secret for you, and that is the gods that play in these mythological dramas that the Nords see are in fact Spire, meaning it's another faction within the setting of the universe. They are a completely alien faction, and their technology is so advanced that it appears to the Nords as magic. They can't understand it. That truly the gods have come and walked among us, and they revived this dead warrior, and they strengthened this, and they gave this guy a kick, an awesome sword, all full of magical power. And actually, it's more like an ancient civilization came. They were able to repair a primitive mammal that existed on the planet, equip them with the weapons that they needed, and gave them a little boost to the immune system. Like that's really what's happening. But there's two different visions at all times between what the Nords are perceiving and what is actually happening. This is some ancient aliens level stuff, because the Spires were experimenting on humans to see if they would make good natural defenses, right? There's Dwegholm running around, there's dragons. We need something to kind of like watch our borders. So maybe we'll modify this primitive race that exists here, make them better at fighting, make them a little more adaptable to their environment, and we'll just kind of use them as groundkeepers. Some of these humans that they modified, they turned into grand exalted warriors known as the Einherjar. However, something went wrong. We covered that a lot during the Nord lore videos, which you can find in the description down below, a link to that playlist rather. And these promised giants were never woken up for their big epic battle. So if we're going with the mythology of Vikings from our world, Ragnarok, the end of days, had come and went because no one woke up the army that was sleeping. And this whole drama of, the world of the gods all fell apart, the end of the Aesir. And so from this, because that is their belief system and they missed their big battle, we are technically looking at post-apocalyptic Vikings, right? They've lived past the end of their prophecies and their religion's natural conclusion. Not only that, but because of the genetic nature of all these experiments and modifications, their ranks are filled with all kinds of beasts and monsters and half-humans and mutants and all kinds of stuff. We perceive them in fantasy tropes of like the ogre, but ogres are just grossly deformed, modified human genome. My point is, all the grotesque stuff that you see within the Nords, all the inhuman natures of things, it's the genetic aftermath of the Spire's experiments still wreaking havoc on them. But now let's move from the Nords to talking specifically about the Konungyr himself. Now, there is very little information about this guy. Okay, I'm going to read his entire entry, and it's like 2 sentences. The fragmented leadership of the Nords respects only one thing: power and strength, which is 2 things. Less than a dozen leaders live among the Nords can claim and hold the title of Konungyr. Ultimate recognition of this accomplishment is an invitation by Angbjorn, the last of the Einherjar and titular High King of the Nords, to the High Table in Airheim. So what we're able to glean from this is that Konungyr is a title bestowed to the strongest, most efficient warriors that exist within the Nord Kingdom. You have to prove yourself to the last living demigod that exists, Einherjar. Remember those super soldiers that they created, the Spires created rather? Well, he's their king. He's a living representation of their myths and legends and religions. And he gets to pick out his best, strongest warriors to lead all kinds of hell into battle, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But what I like about this is they don't fill a specific role of leadership in terms of like the spiritual care, like say the Volva does, or the military control, like say the Jarl. This is an honorific. He doesn't have to do anything. He comes with the authority and the blessing of the Einherjar. He's a big deal whenever the Konungyr steps on the battlefield. In fact, now that I'm thinking about the different leader options that are available to the Nords right now, he might be the best representation of the direct authority of the Einherjar. Like when he is there, he's their representative, because the other ones aren't really like hand-picked by them, which honestly I think makes for a really cool introductory hero, right? You have a guy, you're a warrior of legend, you just started playing Conquest, that's how you want to feel. But let's start talking about his rules. So here we are, the Konungyr. Don't pay attention to the model too much because they put an alternate sculpt in that 2-player starter set, so if he looks a little different from yours, that's why. He is an infantry character, and he comes in at medium, which is wonderful because it means he gets to be able to cap objectives. If he were light, he wouldn't be able to. He has a movement of 5, volley 2, clash 4, 6 attacks, 5 wounds, 4 resolve, 2 defense, and 2 evasion. This stat line slaps, okay? 2 evasion on any hero is just really nice. They're just always going to have a save of some kind. Defense 2 is meh, but it puts him pretty much on par with the rest of the Nords. They are not a defensive bunch. Resolve 4 is fantastic within this army. 6 attacks is brutal, clash 4 as a basis is just good. As for his special rules, he doesn't have any like just base special rules in terms of like cleave or anything like that, but he does have 2 things of note. First one here is your army can only ever have 1 Konungyr. We're going to talk about why here. It'll become very clear as we go along why you can only have 1 of these guys, but this is really big. And his supremacy ability, Living Legend. While this character stand is on the battlefield, all friendly regiments in this army gain the terrifying +1 special rule if they have performed a successful charge action until the end of the round. This supremacy ability is always considered to be active. So I mentioned this a lot when I talked about the chieftain, as much as I love the Wadrun. This is the Wadrun version of this for me in the Nords, which is I love bonuses to charge. There's just something about rolling that hot dice, moving everybody in, and seeing the enemy that you barreled into just evaporate. I love it. Even if I know that my unit that charged them is going to get annihilated next round, don't care, worth it to roll the dice. But instead of being Shock Assault, which gives +2 to the clash when you charge, this is Living Legend, and it does a really cool different thing. So adding Terrifying to special rules, I absolutely adore that. Terrifying, if you don't know, it negatively modifies the resolve stat of other characters. So if you charge in melee, okay, which obviously you're charging in, you're doing melee damage, you're going to roll all of your attacks, which Nords are really good at getting a lot of dice going. They can anyway. And then your opponent rolls to save. Any of their failed saves, they then have to take a resolve test because you're in melee. Now, the one notable exception is Old Dominion, because Old Dominion does not care. Nobody runs away. Nobody's scared because no one's smart enough to be scared. They are all skeletons and whatever. But I do enjoy, I will say, the Terrifying +1. I think that's pretty cool. I don't know if it's the best. I mean, I'm looking at some of the others here in the background. He's probably not, but I like it. But one thing I love about the Konungyr, and frankly a lot of the Nord heroes, is their ability to customize themselves, okay? Which is cool, especially in a unit that you can only have 1 of, right? You want to be able to play them a lot of different ways. The Konungyr definitely delivers on that. His kind of customization, in addition to artifacts, masteries, and retinues like everybody has, he has what's called aspects, or this is pretty ubiquitous amongst Nords. They have different aspects. What creatures are you channeling or kind of giving your devotion towards or trying to harness the essence of when you go to battle? First one is the dragon. The aspect of the dragon. This character adds +1 to its clash characteristic, going to clash 5. Not bad, not bad. I mean, +1 clash is always good, but let's see. The next one is bear. This character stand adds +1 to its wound characteristic. Okay. I could definitely see use for that, especially given his bad defensive stats. Aspect of the wolf adds +1 to his attack characteristic. If you give him a ball or artifact weapon, this could be super gross. And then aspect of the eagle. This character gains the Seize the Day draw event. Seize the Day, draw your next command card. That regiment is activated immediately. Once the regiment has completed its activation, the character stand takes its action. Seize the Day would be terrific if, say, you gave this to him, you had the Konungyr and whatever regiment he's with being a melee one. So then you could draw the Konungyr, it does the Seize the Day a draw event, the next regiment, the one he's attached to is the next card, they get to go, maybe move and charge, get him into combat, and then it goes back to the Konungyr's actions. Maybe he can challenge a hero or something that's in the regiment you just charged. It's a cool little mechanic. You can do a lot of cool things with this. He has access to the same artifacts, masteries, and retinues as pretty much most of the Nord dudes. But one thing I really wanted to talk about here at the end are his warband options, because this is why people love the Konungyr. Okay, let me just throw this out there. His mainstay. He's got Steel Chosen, which as far as I know are not released yet. Bow Chosen, which are a super aggressive, gross ranged unit. Blade Chosen, which are a kind of the mirror image of them, but more of a melee version. And Huskarls, which are your cheapest choice. They are going to be your basic troops. If you're new to list building in Conquest, basically you pick a hero, in this case the Konungyr, and then you have to pick at least one mainstay regiment for your warband, and for every mainstay, you can pick one restricted. Up to 4 total. So if I take the Konungyr and a unit of Bow Chosen, that means I now can take one restricted option. But if you look at their restricted options, you see something really funny, and that is Ice Jotnar, Sea Jotnar, and the Mountain Jotnar. In the core set that you get a Mountain Jotnar. This is how you can access him. You throw the Konungyr with like the Blade Chosen or the Huskarls and bring in the Mountain Jotnar as your restricted choice. It's all really cool. I adore this. In any other army, I would probably articulate this as like, oh, this is your weapons master. He's the guy who brings the big heavy weapons, the siege equipment. Maybe if it were 100 Kingdoms, it would be the trebuchets or something crazy like that. This guy brings the heat. He brings the high wound, massive damaging units to the table. Jotnars are disgustingly good. Mountain Jotnars are great sponges. Ice Jotnars are great debuff pieces. Sea Jotnars have that, I think they're the ones you can throw. Yeah, because they have the anchor or whatever. All these kinds of attacks, they're just wonderful. Now keep in mind, at most, you can only ever bring 2 under him. Remember, 4 regiments total. 2 have be mainstays to give you access to 2 restricted. But I will say that there are multiple options of heroes that can give you access to the Mountain Jotnar in particular. So if you're going to build a list around this, use the Mountain Jotnar that you have right now, absolutely. If you want an all Jotnar list or to really emphasize them, taking a Konungyr with the Ice and Sea Jotnars is great, and then you can have a Jarl with the Mountain one. I just wanted to point out that the Mountain Jotnar has a lot more accessibility than the other 2, but the Konungyr is why the other 2 are so cool. Now, just looking at this guy's entry, he is not nearly as much of a army force multiplier as the Chieftain is. The Chieftain himself doesn't do a whole lot, but he has a lot of ways to, change the function of your army. The Konungyr doesn't really change the function of Nords, although I do think +1 terrifying is really great. Instead, he does 2 major things. He gives you easy and reliable access to Bow Chosen, which are a phenomenal unit to the point where people complain about them, and of course, all of the giants. All in all, I think he makes for a very interesting hero. Certainly a great contender for the starter set, the 2-player starter set, because he does a great thing of introducing players to a lot of different aspects of the game. His supremacy ability is going to get you modifying different stats, because a lot of things are clash-based, modifying clash when you get inspired stuff. Not as many things in core starter products have to do with resolve, like when I'm looking at the various factions. So it's cool that they kind of play in different aspects of the game. There's customization with the different aspects, his literal aspects that he's able to channel into the dragon, bear, wolf, and eagle. He accepts a whole bunch of different types of artifacts very well. Like there's things to give him ranged attacks, there's ways to get him to be, super devastating with better weapons in combat. He allows you to bring everything that comes in the starter set and gives you access to some of the coolest models that Bellum has available. The Ice and Sea Jotnar are among the prettiest sculpts ever. And so I like the Konungyr. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you are a Nord's champion, a Jarl in your own right, please let me know in the comments down below, how do you get the most out of the Konungyr? And if you were to talk to new players who just bought the 2-player starter set, how would you expand from there? Whenever folks leave helpful comments, I always pin them to the top so that new people can see them. It would mean the world to me if I could get some input, because I'm just jumping into Nords. I mentioned this in my Milestone 2 paint-along video. I just got a whole lot of beautifully built, because I'm going to paint them Nords, and the Konungyr is high on my list. I'm going to do a sea-themed Nord army, and I'm going to love it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Again, if you want to save 10% on all your purchases from Bellum, don't forget to use the affiliate link down below, and I will catch you in my next Conquest video. Happy wargaming.